In ancient Persia, death was not an ending. It was a crossing, a narrow bridge suspended between worlds. Older than scripture, stranger than any doctrine that followed. The Chinvat Bridge, the Separator, the cosmic threshold where every soul must walk alone, watched by beings whose names predate kingdoms, whose function transcends mercy. This was not judgment in the sense later religions would understand it. No tribunal weighed virtue against sin. No divine voice pronounced sentence. The bridge itself was the measure, widening or narrowing according to what the soul had become, not what it believed. In Zoroastrian cosmology, the journey after death followed precise metaphysical laws. The soul lingered 3 nights near the body. Then came the approach, inevitable, solitary, stripped of all temporal identity. Psychopomps waited at the threshold, not as judges but as escorts, through a passage that could not be avoided. The width of the bridge reflected alignment, not righteousness, not piety. Alignment with truth, Asha, the cosmic order underlying all existence. Those aligned moved across stable ground. Those misaligned found the bridge narrowing to a razor's edge, not as punishment, but as exposure to their own density. This was death understood as transition through clarity, a movement from time into structure, from becoming into being. The Chinvat Bridge remains the oldest and strangest map of what happens when consciousness leaves flesh. It stands in Persian memory as the threshold no soul escapes, the passage where every accumulated choice becomes visible terrain, where the journey into eternity begins, not with divine verdict, but with the soul's own weight made manifest. The Chinvat Bridge appears throughout Zoroastrian texts as the unavoidable threshold between earthly existence and the afterlife. Its name derives from Chinvat, separator or sorter, indicating function rather than geography. This was not a mythic embellishment but doctrinal architecture. Every soul crossed without exception 3 days after death. Persian eschatology distinguished itself from later traditions through its understanding of afterlife as alignment rather than reward. The bridge did not sort souls into heaven or hell in the Christian sense. It separated according to druj, disorder, falsehood, versus Asha, cosmic truth, rightness of being. The soul's passage reflected what it had become through thought, word, and deed during life. The earliest references appear in the Gathas, the oldest layer of Zoroastrian scripture, where the bridge is described without elaborate mythological detail. Later texts, the Bundahishan, the Videvdat, expanded the cosmology, placing the bridge at specific cosmic coordinates, describing its appearance and the beings who attend it. But the core doctrine remained constant. Passage determined by alignment, width determined by accumulated truth or falsehood. Fire served as the metaphysical measure. Not literal flame, but luminous truth. That which reveals, clarifies, cannot be deceived. The soul approached the bridge and encountered its own density made visible. Those aligned with Asha experienced the bridge as wide and stable. Those saturated with druj found it narrowing beneath them, not through divine punishment, but through natural law. Fire in Persian thought was purifying intelligence, and the bridge functioned as its threshold. Psychopomps attended the crossing. These were not angels in the Abrahamic sense, but cosmic functions personified, escorts who maintained order at the threshold. Dana, the Maiden of Light, appeared to souls aligned with truth. For those misaligned, she manifested as their own accumulated disorder. The bridge did not create these visions. It revealed what had always existed beneath temporal consciousness. Mithra, the judge, presided not as arbiter of morality, but as guardian of cosmic contract, ensuring that souls received passage appropriate to their alignment. Rashnu held the scales, weighing not deeds against sins, but the soul's fundamental orientation. Sryosha, the messenger, guided the righteous across. Each figure represented a function within metaphysical law, not personalities dispensing mercy or wrath. The question Zoroastrian eschatology posed was precise. How does the soul move from time into eternity? Not through belief or ritual alone, but through the accumulated weight of alignment carried into the moment of crossing. Death became the point where metaphysical law superseded earthly identity. The bridge was that law made traversable or impassable. The journey begins not at death, but 3 nights after. The soul lingers near the body, still partially tethered to flesh, experiencing what Persian texts describe as a state between embodiment and liberation. On the 4th morning, at dawn, the moment when light separates from darkness, the movement towards the Chinvat Bridge begins. The approach is solitary. No companion from earthly life accompanies the soul. It moves through increasingly subtle states of being, shedding temporal associations, name, lineage, social position, until only essential structure remains. What crosses the bridge is not personality but pattern. The journey strips away everything accumulated through living except what has become structural to consciousness itself. The bridge itself exists at the boundary between the material world and higher orders of being. Texts describe it as spanning from Mount Hara, the cosmic mountain at the center of the world, to the peak of celestial judgment. But this is cosmological language, not geography. The bridge marks transition from temporal to eternal, from becoming to alignment. Its location is metaphysical. Wherever consciousness confronts its own accumulated structure without mediation, width varies according to the soul's accumulated orientation. For those aligned with Asha, the bridge expands to 9 spear lengths, stable, traversable, reflecting inner order made manifest. The crossing feels natural, inevitable, like walking ground that has always existed beneath one's feet. Light surrounds the passage, fragrance fills the crossing. The soul moves toward increasing luminosity. For those saturated with the druj, the bridge narrows to a blade's edge, sharp as a razor, thin as a hair. This narrowing is not imposed, it is revelation. The soul experiences its own density as obstacle. Every misalignment becomes weight-pulling consciousness downward. Every falsehood accumulated during life becomes friction against passage. The narrowness reflects fragmentation made manifest. Psychopomps appear at the threshold. Dana, sometimes called the Maiden of Conscience, manifests according to alignment. To truth-aligned souls, she appears as a radiant maiden of 15, the age of perfection, youth meeting wisdom, beautiful, fragrant, guiding the soul across with gentle authority. She is recognition, the soul seeing its own accumulated truth personified. To disorder-aligned souls, she appears as accumulated falsehood, a hag, hideous, terrifying not through external judgment, but through perfect reflection. She shows the soul what it has become through choices made during embodiment. Her horror is the soul's own disorder made visible. She does not judge, she reveals. She escorts, but does not intervene. The crossing proceeds according to law. Mithra observes, Rashnu weighs, Sraosha guides where guidance is structurally possible. But none can alter what the soul has become. The bridge responds to pattern, not to appeal. The passage itself is exposure. No concealment remains possible. Every misalignment becomes weight. Every alignment becomes clarity. The soul does not fall into punishment, but into restoration, appropriate to its state. Those aligned continue upward through increasingly luminous realms. The house of song, where consciousness dwells in structures of pure light. Those misaligned descend into the house of lies, not as eternal torment, but as clarification, places where disorder meets its own nature until restoration becomes possible. What emerges from Persian doctrine is death as metaphysical filtration, a passage where truth cannot be avoided, where consciousness meets its own accumulated structure without mediation. The bridge serves cosmic order, not divine whim. It is architecture, not theater, and every soul walks it alone. The Chinvat Bridge functions as threshold consciousness, the point where temporal identity confronts eternal structure. Its narrowing or widening reflects not moral failing, but ontological density. A soul saturated with druj carries disorder as substantial weight. This weight does not disappear at death. It becomes the terrain the soul must navigate. Alignment with Asha means correspondence with cosmic order, thought, speech, and action oriented toward truth. This orientation creates structure that survives bodily death. Misalignment creates fragmentation. The bridge reveals this fragmentation as narrowness, not through punishment, but through natural metaphysical law. What is disordered cannot traverse order without friction. The 3 nights of lingering reveal the soul's transitional state. During embodiment, consciousness operates through flesh, bound to temporal sequence. At death, this binding loosens, but does not immediately sever. The soul experiences 3 nights as a threshold period, still aware of the body, still connected to earthly identity, but increasingly unable to affect material reality. This is the beginning of reorientation, consciousness learning to exist without flesh as medium. On the 4th dawn, the movement begins because light initiates transitions in Persian cosmology. Dawn is separation, darkness from light, night from day, material from immaterial. The soul moves at dawn because it is crossing from one modality into another, and such crossings require the cosmic moment when boundaries become permeable. Psychopomps represent cosmic functions personified. Dana is not a separate being judging the soul, but consciousness meeting its own accumulated pattern. Her radiance or horror reflects the soul's relationship to truth. She guides because guidance is structural. Order shepherding disorder toward appropriate restoration. Truth illuminating falsehood for necessary clarification. She appears at 15 because that age represents completion. Childhood ended, maturity begun. Potential fully present, but not yet degraded by time. Her appearance changes according to the soul because she is mirror, not entity. To the truth aligned, she reflects accumulated clarity. To the disorder aligned, she reflects accumulated falsehood. She is what the soul has made of itself through living, now externalized and made visible. The shock of seeing her, beautiful or horrifying, is the shock of perfect self-recognition, without the distortions temporal existence allows. The Hermetic parallel is precise. In Hermetic Ascent, the soul sheds planetary densities as it rises through spheres, anger at Mars, deception at Mercury, desire at Venus. Each sphere strips what does not belong to essential nature. The Chinvat crossing operates identically. Temporal accumulations fall away, leaving only what genuinely constitutes the soul's pattern. The bridge is the first great stripping. The spheres beyond continue the process. This makes afterlife not static reward or punishment, but dynamic integration. The soul moves toward its appropriate level within cosmic architecture. Those aligned with higher orders ascend naturally, not through earned merit, but through structural compatibility. They belong to luminous realms because they have become luminous. Those misaligned descend not into eternal torment, but into restorative states where disorder can be clarified. Movement continues because consciousness is fundamentally kinetic, not static. The bridge reveals a doctrine rarely articulated: death as reorientation rather than termination or judgment. The soul does not cease. It transitions from one mode of being into another, carrying its accumulated structure into realms where structure determines placement. Time ends, pattern remains, and pattern seeks its level according to immutable law. Persian eschatology established the architecture, Chinvat as threshold, where alignment determines passage, light as measure of truth, Psychopomps as escorts maintaining cosmic order. This was not metaphor, but metaphysical doctrine. The soul's journey following precise laws independent of belief. Jewish apocalyptic literature absorbed this framework through centuries of Persian influence. Enochian texts describe soul journeys through multiple heavens, each threshold guarded by angels who verify the soul's readiness to ascend. These angels function identically to Zoroastrian psychopomps, not judging but escorting, maintaining boundaries between orders of being. The righteous soul passes upward through increasingly luminous realms. The unprepared soul cannot proceed. The Book of the Watchers describes Enoch's ascent through 7 heavens, each more luminous than the last, each requiring purification to enter. Angels at each threshold assess not moral virtue, but ontological compatibility. Whether the soul's structure can withstand higher frequencies of being. Those aligned ascend. Those unprepared remain at appropriate levels until further clarification occurs. The mechanism matches Persian doctrine precisely. Later Jewish texts describe the bridge of hell stretched over Gehenna, where souls cross after death. Righteous souls traverse easily. Wicked souls fall. But earlier layers suggest something more nuanced. The bridge as revealer of accumulated structure, passage determined by alignment rather than divine decree. Persian influence persists, even where later moralization obscures original metaphysical precision. Hermetic texts transformed the threshold into spheres. The soul ascending through planetary heavens sheds densities, returning anger, lust, deception to their cosmic sources. What reaches the highest sphere is essential consciousness, aligned with nous, freed from temporal accumulations. The mechanism matches Persian doctrine, passage determined by alignment, movement upward through clarification, psychopomps replaced by planetary archons, who strip rather than escort, but serve identical function. The corpus hermeticum describes the soul ascending through 7 planetary governors, each demanding return of the passion they granted during embodiment. The soul surrenders anger at Mars, avarice at Jupiter, deception at Mercury, precisely the shedding Persian doctrine describes, translated into Greek cosmological language. What crosses into the Ogdoad is pure consciousness, having returned all temporal densities to their sources. Later traditions moralized these structures. Christian cosmology turned bridge into judgment, psychopomps into angels of reward, and demons of punishment, passage into binary salvation or damnation. The metaphysical precision collapsed into moral categories. What Persian thought described as natural law, disorder finding its level, order ascending, became divine verdict pronounced by external authority. Yet the original architecture persists beneath theological revision. Every ladder, bridge, or ascent through heavens reflects the same understanding. Consciousness moves after death, according to what it has become. The threshold reveals. Escorts guide. Alignment determines destination. The journey continues beyond flesh, according to immutable structure. The Chinvat Bridge reveals death as reorientation, not cessation or judgment. The soul does not end. It transitions from temporal to eternal modality, carrying accumulated structure into realms where structure alone determines placement. This makes earthly existence not a test, but a formative process. What the soul becomes during embodiment constitutes its post-mortem trajectory. Alignment functions as ontological law, not moral precept. To align with Asha means organizing consciousness around truth, perception matching reality, speech matching perception, action matching both. This creates coherence that survives death. Misalignment creates fragmentation, thought contradicting perception, speech contradicting thought, action contradicting all three. Such fragmentation cannot navigate higher orders smoothly. The bridge exposes this mechanically. The bridge's width, reflects this mechanically, not as reward or punishment, but as natural consequence. Coherent consciousness traverses stable ground. Fragmented consciousness encounters friction proportional to its disorder. The narrowing is revelation, not imposition. The soul experiences its own accumulated pattern without mediation. What felt manageable during embodiment, contradictions smoothed by time, falsehoods hidden by social performance, becomes impassable terrain when consciousness must navigate it directly. This suggests embodiment serves specific purpose, allowing consciousness to accumulate structure in buffered environment. Time dilutes consequences. Flesh mediates metaphysical law. Society allows concealment. These are not punishments, but training conditions. The soul learns through living what patterns create coherence, what patterns create fragmentation. Death removes the buffer. The accumulated pattern becomes immediate terrain. Psychopomps exist to maintain cosmic boundaries, not to judge individual souls. They are functions of order personified, ensuring that what belongs to lower densities remains there, that what has achieved sufficient clarity ascends. Their presence indicates that afterlife follows law, not arbitrary divine will. The universe is structured. Death is integration into that structure. Dana reveals, Mithra observes, Rashnu weighs, Sraosha guides. Each performs cosmic function necessary to maintain boundaries between orders of being. Persian eschatology understood what later traditions obscured. The soul carries its own weight into eternity. No ritual absolves accumulated disorder. No prayer widens the bridge. Only alignment, cultivated through living orientation toward truth, determines passage. This places responsibility squarely on consciousness itself, not to appease divinity, but to become what can traverse clarity. The bridge is test only in the sense that existence itself tests whether consciousness has learned coherence. The implications extend beyond individual fate. If afterlife operates through metaphysical law rather than divine judgment, then the cosmos itself possesses intelligence, not personality, but structured order that consciousness must navigate. The Chinvat Bridge is not mythic scenery. It is the universe revealing itself as filter, separator, sorter of patterns according to their fundamental nature. This makes Persian afterlife doctrine profoundly impersonal, yet precisely just. No favoritism exists. No exception can be granted. The soul receives exactly what its structure allows it to navigate. Those aligned ascend, because ascending is what aligned consciousness naturally does. Those misaligned descend, because descending is the only movement fragmented consciousness can accomplish. The bridge judges nothing. It reveals everything. Every soul must cross the bridge. This was the ancient Persian understanding, not as threat, but as metaphysical fact. Death removes the temporal layer. What remains encounters its own accumulated structure without concealment. The bridge widens or narrows according to what the soul has become, not what it believed or hoped or feared. Ritual cannot alter the bridge's width. Prayer cannot shorten the crossing. Offerings cannot purchase easier passage. Only alignment shapes the journey. Thought, word, and deed oriented toward truth during embodiment, creating pattern that survives beyond flesh. In Persian cosmology, death was the moment consciousness stands in its own light. All pretense falls away. All temporal identity dissolves. What crosses carries only essential structure, alignment or disorder, coherence or fragmentation, truth or accumulated falsehood made visible. The soul sees itself as it genuinely is, not as it imagined itself to be. The Chinvat Bridge remains the silent measure between time and eternity, older than heaven, stranger than hell, more precise than any judgment throne. It asks no questions. It requires no confession. It simply reveals what the soul has always been beneath the noise of living. Where alignment exists, the crossing is passage. Where disorder persists, the crossing is clarification. Either way, the soul continues, because consciousness does not end at death, but transitions into structure, and structure determines destination. The journey after death is the journey consciousness always makes, toward its own level, its own frequency, its appropriate place within cosmic architecture. The bridge narrows according to weight, widens according to clarity, and every soul walks it alone, not as punishment but as passage, not as judgment but as revelation, not as ending but as transformation into what consciousness has always been becoming.